Howdy, this is the Views from the Shop podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Friday, January 16th, 2026, and I wish you a very, very, very happy National Good Teen Day. On today's show, we get ready to break down the Buckeyes matchup with the UCLA Bruins coming to town here on Saturday, 1 o'clock tip-off on CBS. We'll do a complete game breakdown, talk about UCLA's background. We'll talk about their offense and defense, two keys to the game for Ohio State to win, and then a prediction. There's a lot of question marks going into this game for Ohio State. This is a really intriguing matchup and one that I personally said coming into the season, look, you've got the Purdue game at home. That is the far and away favorite to win the Big Ten this season. And then you've got the home game against your arch rival, Michigan, of course. Outside of that, what's the biggest game on Ohio State's home schedule? I identified this game against UCLA. And while they're not ranked right now by the AP, at least I don't think they are. That's how much I pay attention to the AP. Even that, they're still kind of middle of the pack right now in the Big Ten, that does not mean they're a bad team whatsoever. This is still a very intriguing matchup. We'll talk about all of the Christoph Tilley news. We'll talk about if he plays, if he doesn't play, what happens for Ohio State and all that. I will say, though, rarely does this happen. I wish it happened all the time, but it doesn't. Sometimes we have episodes that just get far and away better feedback than other shows get. And the episode with Matt Sylvester that was published on Wednesday morning, we had an honest conversation with Matt. And it was, look, you're a former team captain. You hit one of the most iconic shots in Ohio State basketball history. You were with the program for 4 years, playing for 4 years. And now you're around the program today. You know Jake Diebler. You get to see practices. You get a peek behind the curtain more than most people do, like you and I. So that said, let's have an honest conversation about where you think this program is heading. Is Jake Diebler the right guy for the job? What do you see from this year's team? And a whole lot more. We got into that. I got some DMs. I got some messages on the Substack. I got people quoting and commenting on the tweet that just shows that the episode is out. All of that, it's kind of rare to have really, really good feedback like that. I normally multiply it by 10. I would say if one person says it, probably about 9 other people are thinking it. They just didn't publicly say it. A lot of great feedback on that show. Maybe we just stop doing the review and the preview shows and we just have conversation with Matt Sylvester. I don't know. Maybe that's the direction the show needs to go in. But all that said, encourage you to give that a watch or give that a listen if you haven't already. It's pretty evergreen. You can say, hey, Siri, set a reminder for me to listen to that show. If that sent your Siri into a frenzy there, it's okay. It's not 2012 anymore, so she probably didn't hear us anyway. That said, would recommend that you give that show a listen at some point this weekend or even into next week. That was a really, really good episode that got a lot of good feedback, so recommend you get there. Of course, follow on the socials at the Shop Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube right now, please like the video, subscribe on YouTube. Those numbers are doing great right now, so please like the video. And you know the Substack at this point, Views from the Shop podcast.substack.com. Get there, sign up for completely free. You basically, it's kind of like having push notifications for Ohio State basketball only. Whenever something new comes out, I'll drop a note there. And of course, you can get in on the insider chat as well, should you choose to do so. So highly recommend you get there as well. I will say one other note. If you're watching on YouTube, you're just going to see it. There will be some pauses. I got to polish off this protein smoothie. It is what it is. So if you can accept me for doing that this morning, then I accept you for being here on the show. And you know what? There's nowhere I'd rather be than talking about Ohio State hoops. We got some football fans filtering in. You're welcomed. You don't get to just come in and say fire Diebler after one game. We got to ease our way into it, okay? So Ohio State taking on UCLA again. This game will tip off on CBS in Columbus. It's a big game. A lot of eyes are going to be on this Ohio State game. I don't know what else. Here we go. I mean, unfortunately, this is just kind of how it goes sometimes, where we just get into saying, I wonder what this is going to look like before we even get there. There are some games on Saturday let's take a look at just the 12 and 1 o'clock slate. You got Virginia SMU. That's not going to get the eyes that Ohio State and UCLA will. Kentucky, Tennessee might. I don't know. Outside of that, as I look down, there's no games. There's no games that are going to get the attention that Ohio State and UCLA are going to get. Florida and Vanderbilt play at 2. UCLA, Ohio State, just in terms of brand value and the amount of fans that are going to be watching this game, you're going to see a lot of people on this game. So Ohio State, they got to show up in this one. There's going to be a lot of people watching this game, I think. So let's get into the UCLA background here first and foremost. Then we'll talk about, again, the offense, the defense. We're going to talk about Christoph Tilly, his status. Is he going to play? If he does, what happens? If he doesn't, what happens? We'll talk about all that. But first, we'll talk about UCLA. So they come into this game 12-5. They're 4-2 in the Big Ten. So respectable right now, not only with their overall record, but with their conference record as well, very early in the year. This was a fantastic game to watch. If it's Friday, if you got nothing to do this weekend or Friday night, whatever the case may be, watch the highlights from Arizona and UCLA playing early in the year. That was a really good game. UCLA got out to an early lead. Arizona ended up winning that game, but UCLA was in it for the entire way. And Arizona, we know, is the number 1 team in the nation right now. At least I would assume in the AP. Again, you may think I'm a casual for not knowing where teams are ranked in the AP. That's absolutely not it. I have so little respect for the AP, actually, for the voters and the box score scanners, that I just prefer to ignore it altogether. You may not be that way. You may care. If the AP poll, if it's important to you, that's fine. To me, it's not. So that's it. UCLA lost to Cal. That doesn't look great. They lost to Gonzaga by 10 in non-conference play, but they did start Big Ten play with wins over Oregon and Washington. Very nice of the Big Ten schedulers to say, hey, UCLA, you stay home. You stay in the same time zone. Because for some reason, UCLA and Oregon, it's a conference game in the Big Ten now, as is UCLA and Rutgers. Makes perfect sense. Then you get into January, UCLA, they just knocked off Penn State on Wednesday. They won against Maryland before that. And in January here in Big Ten play as well, they have taken losses to Wisconsin and Iowa. So right now, this is games heading into January 15th. 45th in the net, 41st in Ken Palm, 45th in Bart Torvik. Good numbers. These numbers would say, hey, right now you're on the bubble, maybe on the outside looking in, depends on where you look. This is a bubble team, just like the Ohio State University Buckeyes at this point. By the way, Ohio State in the net right now, they are not 208th. That would be Ohio University. Ohio State is 41st, so just 4 spots ahead of UCLA and Ken Palm. Ohio State is, I'm going colorblind looking at this, they're 38th, so a couple spots higher as well. So analytically, these teams seen as very, very similar. Mick Cronin, head coach at UCLA, going into his 7th season here. When he's not publicly shamed by his players, he's enjoyed some winning seasons in every year, but one at UCLA, a couple nice NCAA tournament runs and some fun finishes as well with UCLA basketball in March Madness. We've seen some shakeups to the starting lineup. We've seen some injuries in the rotation. Not a single player has started all 17 games this year for UCLA. Tyler Bilodeau, he's missed a game, come off the bench in one. Donovan Dent, we'll talk about him. Remember how big of a name he was in the offseason. He's come off the bench in one game as well this year. And Sky Clark has missed some time. His status for this game is in question. That's something to watch on Saturday. When the availability reports come out, look for Sky Clark's name. Will he play? Will he not? I don't know. UCLA seems to know. We'll talk about that later in the show as well. I must take a sip because I must get my 30 G's in. With the milk, though, it's a little bit more than 30 G's. If you know, you know. The offense for UCLA, 78.4 points per game so far this season, 118.8 offensive rating. They're shooting at 47.9% from the field, 36.7% from the three-point line, and they're 52nd in adjusted offensive efficiency so far this year, according to Ken Palm. Now, here's the thing. Those numbers look pretty good for UCLA. But this Bruins offense has actually struggled here in the calendar year of 2026. In 4 games so far in 2026, they have scored 72 points in an 8-point loss to Wisconsin. That's the most they've scored this calendar year. They had a 122.6 offensive rating on Wednesday night against Penn State. But other than that, every other offensive rating has fallen below 107, which is really not good whatsoever. They shot below 46% in every game while making 5 or less 3-pointers in 3 of 4 games so far this calendar year. And even in that Penn State game, they somehow went 21 of 21 from the free throw line. UCLA is a good free throw shooting team, by the way. Where'd my college basketball analytics page go? Let's just pull one up, I guess. cbbanalytics.com. Friend of the show. Pull up their free throw shooting numbers here. If they're good, to be exact, it's 75.9% so far this year for UCLA. So they're a good free throw shooting team. Again, they went 21 of 21 against Penn State. Now, they still won the game by 11, so you'd have to miss a lot to lose. That's still a lot of points and efficiency from a spot that really allows points in just random spurts from game to game. So even in that Penn State game, it was losable, I guess you could say. I watched the entirety of that game. The game not really ever in doubt, I guess I would say, for UCLA. You come in as 4.5-point favorites on the road. You kind of always lean toward UCLA winning that game, and obviously they did end up winning that game. But UCLA, the offense has been cold recently. Season long, they've actually been a pretty good team offensively, shooting the ball, especially 47.9% from the field, like I said, and almost 37% from deep. That's 6th and 3rd in the Big Ten so far this season. They've got 4 guys shooting above 50% from the field. That's Xavier Booker, old friend of Tom Izzo, Tyler Bilodeau, Jamar Brown is included there. Sky Clark, we'll talk about him now. So he's turned into one of the most productive 3-point shooters in the nation. He's the best 3-point shooter by average in the Big Ten Conference right now, while he's tied with Bruce Thornton, 14th in the conference in 3-pointers attempted per game. I believe at 5 flat there. So he's shooting really, really well in terms of efficiency, but he's also getting the volume up there as well for UCLA. Now, Mick Cronin, he labeled him as doubtful for the Ohio State game, but he did say that he looked good in the shoot-around before the Penn State game. So I don't know if Sky Clark is going to play. You may not know if Sky Clark is going to play. Sky Clark, he may not even know if he's going to play in this game. It's a name to keep an eye on because, again, he can hit from deep, very effective, very efficient there. And we'll talk about how UCLA has played without Sky Clark here in a second. So we'll see if he can go in this one. If he can't, that's good for Ohio State, obviously. Look at Bilodeau. I've always loved him as a player, really like the way that he plays there at UCLA. He shoots it above 40% from deep, along with Booker, Trent Perry, Jamar Brown, also not too far behind, just below 40%. So you've got some guys who can hit from deep with varying degrees of volume, obviously. But Bilodeau, he's got the volume there. Xavier Booker, not really. Trent Perry does. Jamar Brown, he plays less minutes. But these are all guys who you got to guard at the 3-point line. But as I mentioned here, in 2026, the shooting has really fallen off. I think that likely has to do with Sky Clark not playing since the first game of 2026 against Iowa. I believe he played 22 total minutes in that game before leaving with injury. You look at Bilodeau, he finally came back to life against Penn State. He made 4 3-pointers in that game. In the previous 3, he made 0, 0, 0, and 0 in the 3 games before that. And outside of that stretch for Bilodeau, he only made 0 3-pointers in 2 other games this entire season. So it's not like missing 3-pointers for an entire game and not making 3-pointers for an entire game is normal for Bilodeau, but he's done it until this Penn State game. He did it 3 games in a row here in January. So he's come back to life. Perry, he exploded for a 30-piece against Penn State. They've got to get everyone on the same page in this one, especially if Sky Clark can't go. Ohio State, on the other end, defensively, by the way, they've been really hit or miss overall. Really poor analytically against Washington, pretty solid against Oregon, Nebraska, okay, and pretty poor against Rutgers, even though they did come out with the win in that one. So I'm not sure that Ohio State is necessarily going to be the team that just can clamp UCLA offensively due to their past performances. Is this a get right game, though, for UCLA offensively? I wouldn't say that either. Ohio State's been kind of middle of the road all season. I'm going to take another sip if you don't mind. Appreciate you for allowing me to do that. Mick Cronin. So he continues to take a more old school approach to offense. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's outdated or anything like that. But just as you watch this UCLA offense, that's kind of what you see. You see a lot of cutting and replacing. Really, after 2 ticks or so, guys are moving off the ball, which is great. You love to see that. They're really deliberate in finding quality shots rather than pushing the tempo. They're just 27th percentile in pace so far this season. So that's where you're going to see styles butt heads between Ohio State and UCLA. Although, for a guy who really talks about how important it is to play with pace in Jake Diebler, Ohio State so far this season in pace, they're at 66.7, which is higher than UCLA, but only 36th percentile in college basketball. So I kind of think that we as a fan base have been a little bit brainwashed by Jake Diebler saying we're going to run up and down the floor. We got the horses. We want to go. They've never done that. Ever. They have never done that consistently under Jake Diebler. From the time, remember, I say this on the show from time to time, Chris Holtmann, the year he got fired, Ohio State played with a higher pace under Holtmann than they did with Diebler. Diebler talks a lot about playing fast. You don't see it quite as much as you think you might see it for Ohio State. So I do think the styles, they butt heads a little bit, but not as much as you may think. Spacing, driving kick reads, those will lead to the catch and shoot opportunities for UCLA. You see a 57.5% assist rate. That's 80th percentile in college basketball. So they're good at sharing the ball. They also want to control possessions. They have just a 13.4% turnover rate, which is also conveniently 80th percentile in college basketball this season. So this is an offense that's deliberate, that's purposeful, that wants to get quality shots, that wants to share the basketball and find open guys. They'll take shots really from anywhere, but overall, they want to control tempo. They want to control possessions. They don't want to take bad shots. They don't want to risk turnovers, anything like that. That is kind of the sphere that this offense plays within. So overall, you look at Bilodeau, he continues to kind of ball out at UCLA, 17.7 points per game. This season at 6'9", he can rise up and score from the mid-range, similar way that you're used to seeing Devin Royal score. He's a true 3-level scorer, though, I would say more than Devin Royal. I mentioned Clark, his ability to hit threes already. We'll see if he's able to suit up in this one. And a player that I still haven't mentioned yet is Donovan Dent. Former All-American, transfers into UCLA. You remember how big of a deal it was? Then he entered the portal. And I wouldn't say he's been bad by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes the loudest a player's name gets is right when he hits the portal. That's kind of been the case, I think, for Donovan Dent. He's not playing poorly. 12.3 points per game this year, 6.4 assists per game, but he's shooting 9.1% from behind the arc. He's been pretty inefficient inside as well. That assist rate is 98th percentile in college basketball, so that's where he's making his money. So, I mean, he got a large NIL deal. I don't know the exact details. I will say he's getting paid in a very similar way to another really good point guard in the Big Ten who may be playing in this game. And that's as specific as I'd like to be. Eric Daly Jr., he's pretty crafty as well scoring. It's just a deep offense. I think there's probably 8 guys on this offense who you can really trust to find a bucket in different ways, whether it be Sky Clark hitting threes, whether it be Donovan Dent getting to the rim, whether it be Tyler Bilodeau being able to shoot over guys in the mid-range. Xavier Booker, he shows an ability to hit the three, but obviously he's able to score up near the rim as well. So it's a versatile type of offense in terms of you've got a bunch of guys who can score, and that'll make things interesting here in this one as Ohio State tries to defend UCLA. Another sip. If you're watching on YouTube, you see I'm almost done. However, I don't think I blended long enough because I got some chunks of fruit, and that was rather unpleasant. UCLA's defense, 68.5 points per game allowed so far this season. They've got a 103.8 defensive rating. Only 41.9% of shots from the field go in, and less than 30% of shots from behind the arc go in. Look, this is Mick Cronin. Hey guys, where's Mick Cronin from? Nope, not Mish. Mick Cronin. Oh gosh. Hometown. Mick Cronin, I mean, I knew it was Cincinnati, raised on the west side, says the AI overview, which we cannot trust whatsoever. I would like to see something more in Cincinnati, maybe a suburb. I don't know. I don't know his upbringing. I don't know his background. He feels like a blue collar guy, right? Mick Cronin, he's tough, he's intense, he's blunt, he's demanding. He instills that really blue collar attitude into his players, I think, especially defensively. Mick Cronin seems chronically fussy, and that's okay. Everyone has their thing. He seems chronically fussy. The defensive rebounding this year has not helped that attitude. They've got a 67.8% defensive rebounding rate this year, does UCLA. That would be the lowest ever in Cronin's tenure at UCLA. Still, they're not allowing many second chance points per game. Daly does a good job here. Bilodeau as well. Brown does pretty solid at his position in terms of defensive rebounding rate, but at 6'11", Xavier Booker, he should be much more productive. And the same can be said for Steven Jamerson II, who, granted, he doesn't get as much playing time as these other guys, but you'd like to see more production there. So the defensive rebounding rate, not great for UCLA. That seems like the type of guy who could turn blue in the face watching film, and maybe his head, like, you just watch it swell up with anger watching film and saying, guys, why are we not rebounding? They have not rebounded. The greatest this year defensively has UCLA. There's an area of opportunity for Ohio State. I know Ohio State's offensive rebounding rate, it's been solid. It's not like this is a clear mismatch. Okay. Ohio State's offensive rebounding rate is 33.3%. That's 70th percentile in college basketball this year. So it's not bad, but it's not like we're not pounding the floor here, or pounding our tables or fists or whatever could be pounded. We're not pounding things saying Ohio State should win this game on the offensive glass because they're 7th in the nation in offensive rebounding rate, and UCLA is horrible offensive rebounding rate. That's not as far as we get here on the spectrum, but it is something to keep an eye on, I think, for Ohio State. Again, though, if Christoph Tilley can't go, ... The defensive scheme, I don't really know what we call it here for UCLA. I guess you could say it's a matchup zone type of defense for UCLA. Kind of man-to-man, kind of pack it in, physical on-ball pressure. The help side is loaded to the ball. You want to keep the ball out of the middle, but they'll kind of match up. They'll send a guy from Egypt, and then he's going to guard the ball. And to me, it's confusing, which I'm sure is great. It's probably hard to teach, but once you implement it and it looks good, it's probably hard to score on, and that's been the case under Mick Cronin forever. As you watch, you're going to see the defense turn into that matchup zone type of defense, though. It's going to give offenses fits. Here's the thing. UCLA against Power 5 opponents this year, they're 5-4 when scoring less than 75 points in every single game but two. That shouldn't be possible. You shouldn't be able to be 5-4 against Power 5 opponents scoring less than 75 points in 7 of 9 games. That's not how this should work. That shows how strong this UCLA defense is. It shows how much their pace wins in general for UCLA. So that said, this defensive scheme, it works for them. It limits points that are scored. The pace as well really controls the tempo of the game, and it makes you uncomfortable. We'll talk about that as well moving on. If you do get the ball in the middle of the floor, however, if you're Ohio State, if you're any other offense, teams are shooting 66% at the rim, 46% in the paint, both of which are a fair amount higher than the NCAA average. The issue is teams are shooting at 8.5% less of their shots at the rim than the NCAA average. So this, again, is where styles could butt heads. Ohio State, where do they want to take their shots? They want to take their shots at the rim. They want to take their shots in the paint. As you look at Ohio State, let's just update where they are so far this season. This courtesy of College Basketball Analytics. Where are they taking the most of their field goal attempts so far this year? 32.6% come at the rim. That's right about at Division I average, a little bit higher. And their attempts in the paint, exact same thing. It's a little bit higher than average there as well. But where they're successful is in the rim or at the rim and in the paint. 71% at the rim. NCAA average is 62.4%. And then they are over 10% better than NCAA average in the paint offensively for Ohio State. So this is going to be a battle. It's a battle of UCLA's defense not allowing the ball to get into the middle. And Ohio State, if they can get the ball in the middle of the floor, being able to score and get those shots up. That's going to be something to watch in this one as well. Now, keys to the game in this one. I got 2 keys to the game. That's normally the amount I come with. That's what I bring to you today. Okay. So first, for Ohio State, I say player pace. I don't even know if I believe this as much, but we're recording. And even though this show isn't live, we'll do it live anyway. For Ohio State, you got to player pace. UCLA, I will say, they're not afraid to run in transition. That's not what this is about. However, in the half court, what does UCLA want to do? They want to slow you down on both ends. Both offensively, they want to control the ball. They want to lure you into falling asleep. And then with 7 seconds on the shot clock, UCLA gets the best possible shot that they can get. Defensively, what does UCLA want to do? Keep the ball out of the middle. They'll force you to take threes if you're willing to take them, but they really want to force the issue. They want to slow you down. For Ohio State, I think that means in the half court, can your guards lead you to victory in this one? Can you push your pace in terms of shooting 3-pointers and forcing UCLA to play catch up? I think that could be big for Ohio State in this one, especially at home. Can you be the aggressor early? Can you push the pace and force UCLA to feel uncomfortable? Because they want to slow it down. If you force them to speed it up, that could bode well for Ohio State. Now, the second key to the game in this one, there are not minerals, rocks, stones, boulders, anything like this in this game. Ohio State's got to throw more rocks in this one. I'm not going to say this is a David v. Goliath type of matchup for Ohio State, but what I will say is in this game, you saw it happen last year when Ohio State played UCLA. You're going to get bruised. You're going to have some cuts below the eye. Blood may drip, but you're going to have to be the tougher team, and you're going to have to be the tougher team for 40 minutes. Against Washington, you were the tougher team for about 25 minutes. And then for the final 15 minutes, Washington was tougher. They rebounded better. They played stronger. And because of that, Washington won the game. That cannot be the case in this one. Number one, you're thinner than they are. You don't have the depth that UCLA has. Even if Sky Clark can't go, we're trusting right now. Obviously, Brandon Knoll's not going to play in this game. You still don't have Josh Ojawuna. Braylon Nash is Braylon Nash. You look really at the end of the bench, and those are guys you just really can't trust. Nothing against them, but that's the case at this point. Miles Harrow, he's redshirting this year. So you look at Christoph Tilley, especially if he can't play, you are not as deep as UCLA is, and quite frankly, you might not be as skilled. So what's that mean? It means you're going to have to play stronger. Ivan Nagovin, he's going to have to play stronger. He can't get stripped. And this is something that actually Matt Sylvester talked about on the show on Wednesday. He said at times this team has not been tougher. This team has not consistently been the stronger team so far this year. And if that's the case, that's going to make it tough to win in the Big Ten. I think I said this, it was the Nebraska game as well, where I said, hey, sometimes you just got to, kind of, as Matt Sylvester said, when it's nut cutting time, you got to be the tougher team. Against Nebraska, they weren't, and they lost that game. UCLA, you just got to be ready, and I hope that in practice this week, they're getting hit with those pads. Maybe not even hit with the pads. Maybe as they're going up for layups, Jake Diebler and Dave Dickerson and Luke Simons especially, they're just shoving these guys. And they're hitting them, and they're frustrating them, and Amari Bynum's getting ready to go and playing this game, knowing he's going to get hit hard for the 34 minutes that he plays in this game, or maybe more, especially if there's no Christoph Tilley. I'd say he probably does play more minutes than that in this one. So you're going to have to throw more rocks. You're going to have to be tougher. You're going to get hit by some rocks. You got to be able to not hide, and you got to get up and be stronger and fight back. Because if you don't fight back against UCLA, if you don't fight back against Mick Cronin, I think you lose this game. So those are the 2 keys to the game that I have in this one. My prediction for this game. Here's the thing. The biggest question we have is, will Christoph Tilley play? And look, at this point in the show, it's funny. I was actually listening to the trailer of this episode, or like episode 0 this week, just because I saw it and I was like, what did I say in that show? Sounds a little bit different, but the case is this. Well, it was essentially, this program doesn't get enough attention, whether you agree or disagree that they deserve attention right now. That's not up for debate. It doesn't get enough attention, and we'll see where this goes. I hope that it's fun, and I hope this goes well. I even said maybe one day I'll have players and coaches on the show. And here we are just a couple years later with players and coaches on the show. But all that said, where the show is today is, look, I hit on plenty of things. If you're in the Substack, you know I hit on plenty of things, from the transfer portal to offseason stuff to I don't expect Taysom Chapman to play. I don't expect Matthew Grudzic to play. Here's why they're not playing, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I've hit on plenty at this point. That's not me bragging at this point. That's just pretentious. That's not what I'm saying. It's just I don't need to be the guy at this point who says I know that this is happening or I don't know that this is happening. I can tell you right now, no one outside of the program, and there may be even people within the program who don't know if Christoph Tilley is going to play or not on Saturday. I'll tell you right now, I don't know. I've told people within the Substack and the insider chat there what I think and what I've been told, which isn't much. But that said, I'll just come out and say it. I don't know if Christoph Tilley is going to play in this game. No one knows if Christoph Tilley is going to play in this game. Is he progressing? Hopefully, but you know how concussions are. And whether or not Ohio State is going to share before this game, whether Christoph Tilley is going to be available or not, I don't know. I wouldn't. There's not really any advantage to doing so, but we're going to have to wait for the availability report to see if Christoph Tilley is going to play in this game. So if he does not, who's going to start? It may be Nagovin starting at the 5. They may go with a 3-guard lineup where you see Bruce Thornton, Gabe Cupps, John Mulvey Jr., Devin Royal sliding the 4, and Amari Bynum sliding the 5. Here's the good thing that I will say. UCLA, so far this year, this number comes from KenPom, they are 80th in the nation in average height. Ohio State, on the other hand, in average height is 99th in the nation. The Buckeyes really have not been a big team for several years now at this point, but it's not like your Ohio State going up against who have they played this year who have been big? North Carolina, Illinois. Those are some notable teams that have been really, really big in average height. That's not the case here for UCLA. So maybe you can get away with starting Gabe Cupps and bringing Nagovin off the bench and trying to balance the minutes there a little bit. I don't know who's going to start. I don't know who's going to play. I don't know anything like that. But I will say is, regardless of whether or not Christoph Tilley plays, this is going to be a rock fight. There were just 130 total points scored last year when Ohio State went to UCLA and lost by 8 points last year, late February. It was a low-scoring game, 130 total points scored in the game. I think that that's probably what we're going to have to get used to in this one. The BIP, by the way, says Ohio State should be favored by 3.5. I don't know what number is going to come out in this game. I assume Ohio State's going to be favored. 3.5, man, that feels like a lot to me. It also says the total should be 148.5. BIP has nailed all of the spreads and totals for Ohio State games so far this year. So I'd expect the numbers to be pretty close to that. That said, Buckeyes favored by 3.5, total 148.5. I'd have a lean on both of those. As far as the pick goes, and quite frankly, I just realized that to this point, I haven't really given much thought to who I think is going to win this game. Normally, I have a good feel for it. For this one, man, it's tough, especially if Ohio State doesn't have Christoph Tilley. I think Ohio State not having Christoph Tilley in this specific game means more than UCLA not having Sky Clark. So we will see. Again, the availability report, this is what's going to give us a better idea of what happens. By the way, the BIP, these numbers assume that Christoph Tilley does play for what it's worth. So if he doesn't play, maybe that number moves down closer to UCLA. But look, there's something about a team and a culture and an overall attitude of, look, we don't have Brandon Knoll. We don't have Christoph Tilley. We don't have Josh Ojawuna to save us in this one. UCLA, they're going to want to play tough. They're going to want to play nasty. They're going to want to rebound. They're going to want to throw elbows. They're going to want to play big. They're going to want to play strong. And you know what? John Mobley Jr., you don't have Brandon Knoll coming to save you. You know what? Gabe Cups, Christoph Tilley, if he can't go in this game, he's not going to be able to rebound for you. You're going to have to go stick your butt into a 6'7" player and try to grab the rebound. And that's scary to me. And it's going to be, I think, a measure of pride for Ohio State in this one, if they're able to truly embrace this game being a rock fight. But I think back to what Matt Sylvester said on the show on Wednesday. I think back to what my eyes showed me and how Ohio State lost the game against Washington without Christoph Tilley. I question the toughness of this team. I really do. And against a team like UCLA, that I think toughness-wise, I don't care about anything else. All I care about is toughness. I think UCLA is number one in the Big Ten in terms of playing tough, just straight jacket type of basketball that makes you uncomfortable. And because of that, even with Ohio State having the home court advantage in this one, I think UCLA wins this game. I always hope I'm wrong whenever I pick against Ohio State, but I think UCLA wins this game just because of the toughness factor. I think that pulls them through. What I could also see is 2 years ago, maybe it was last year, Ohio State played that double overtime game at home against Maryland, and they won that game. I think it was double overtime. And that was a game that was close. It was tight throughout, and the Buckeyes come away with the win. Saturday game, great environment. Home crowd was pretty good once the game got really intense late. Maybe that's how it goes in this one. And there's 2 minutes and 38 seconds left to go. Buckeyes are down by 1 point. Bruce Thornton makes a shot to give Ohio State the lead. And all of a sudden, as UCLA walks the ball down the floor, you're seeing the camera pan out, show more of the fans cheering and screaming, and it's getting loud in the shot. That could be how this game goes as well. But my official prediction at this point would be UCLA wins this game just because of kind of the toughness factor. And that's the biggest reason I would say the Bruins win this game in this one. I hope I'm wrong. You know that. I hope I'm wrong. All right. So this game takes place at 1. Be over about 3:15 or so, probably. You will get a recap episode from me sometime Saturday or Sunday. Just keep a lookout. And then, of course, we will continue to preview and review every single game Ohio State plays this season. Look, they've got Minnesota next week before that Friday game. I think it's Friday, where they go to Ann Arbor and play Michigan. So not that we are in must-win mode yet here in Columbus. You kind of gotta have this UCLA game, or else you're gonna get into must-win territory very quickly. That game against Minnesota, I'm not saying it's a must-win. We're in the can't-lose territory, though. Michigan, not can't lose. Then you get to Penn State. Then you get to Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin beat Michigan. I still think Wisconsin's a beatable team. That game on January 31st is at home for Ohio State, which helps out a lot. But then you get into February, and that February stretch is brutal. It's brutal with Michigan, with USC, with Wisconsin again. That's at Wisconsin, and then Michigan State, and then Iowa, and then Purdue. And, well, at least Purdue is in March. So we'll see. We'll keep previewing every single game Ohio State plays. Appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed the show, please give a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I shut up. Before you shut me off, go Bucks.